here this evening? We're here to celebrate the official launch of Publish Like a Pro, which was written by Vanessa Wilson and Georgina Hatch. Unfortunately, Georgina can't join us this evening. Rumor has it that Vanessa locked away. That's why she's not here. Actually, that's not true at all. But we're also very privileged to have with us this evening, and I'm going to apologize up front. I said I'm terrible with languages. Mpumi, who has gone the self-publishing route, has worked extensively with Vanessa, and recently won an internationally acclaimed publishing award for Best Cookbook. What was it? The Gourmand International. Anyone who's in the food business knows it's like a serious book. It's like winning a Michelin star. So she's going to be joining us for a very short panel discussion. Vanessa, I'm incredibly proud of you that you actually finished this book. Vanessa is known in the publishing industry as extremely professional. Anything that comes through her hands and is produced by her hands is superb. There are some huge publishing houses who today still make spelling mistakes on their covers. The one thing I can tell you, it's never going to happen. And I sent my notes through to Vanessa earlier, and after I'd sent it, I read through it, and I'm visually impaired, so I don't always see what's actually there. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to edit, she's going to crap me out that it looks so bad. This is not Vanessa's first book. Vanessa published a book a few years ago on internet humor. It was called Laugh Out Loud. And guess what? It was a bestseller. Maybe you have some copies to sell you this evening. On display this evening as well is Mpumi's book, which is called Through the Eyes of an African Chef. I was paging through it earlier, and then I put the book down, and I rather wanted to speak to her, because actually having the authors here is just such an amazing experience. And before we get into the panel discussion, people forget how important books are. And to spend time in a place like this, my daughter's right in the corner over there, and she's cuddled up in her chair and engrossed in a book. And it's a way to be able to continue our legacies and share our stories. And I was standing upstairs earlier, and a little group of street kids came past, dirty, no shoes, and they stopped outside the bookshop, and there's a poster in the window that says Roald Dahl 100. And these kids read it, and then had a conversation about who's read what. And it's so sad that that's where kids are living, but what an amazing thing that they can read, and they've had experience of Roald Dahl. I mean, so there's hope for all of us. So we're going to start a very short panel discussion. We don't want to bore anybody, but we also want to get a little bit of insight about the book, and also what it's like to self-publish from Mpumi herself. So Vanessa, if we can just maybe from your side, just take us through a little quick summation. Some of you might not know, Vanessa started 30 years ago as a graphic designer, and I'm intrigued how you went from a graphic designer to a renowned publisher and an author, and in your stable you have an international award winner. That's quite a journey. Maybe you want to take us through that journey and what compelled you to write Publish Like a Pro.
Sure, Ingrid. Hi everybody, and thanks so much for being here tonight. First of all, I say publishing chose me. I didn't choose it. I was a graphic designer, a production specialist, in fact, doing a lot of work for South Africa's largest educational publishers. And while I was doing that, I became familiar with the publishing processes, what goes into making a good book. There's a huge team involved, and I think this is what a lot of self-publishing authors don't realize. It is harder doing it yourself because it's only you. A publishing house has a variety of people, from editors to project managers to publishers who do all the business decisions and overseeing everything. They've got graphic designers, they've got typesetters, They've got traffic managers. So there's an entire team that goes together in putting a book together. And I learned a lot from that. Then I published, first of all, I helped publish, and in fact the author's here, Sinead Smith. She wrote the South African Women's Guide to Self-Defense, and that was my first introduction into publishing, actually. I mean, doing it myself, being on the author end of the thing. And I remember we went to Strake, and back in those days when it still existed, and it was interesting getting a contract, which of course it was Sinead's book, so she completed it. But for me to see it from an author's perspective, well, how does a big publisher work? Then I came as a service provider, and then I decided to publish this little laugh out loud book. I'll just show it to you. It's really got the most garish cover. Okay, so some of you might recognize it, some of you may not. By South African standards, considering that we sold it only through bookstores, we managed to sell more than 3,000 copies. And by local standards, a bestseller in this country is anything from 3,500 to 5,000 copies. So, but I did it myself purely because I thought no publisher on earth is going to want to publish a book of internet and email humor. I mean, it's not a literary book. It's a very well-produced book, if I may say so. We edited that thing like you won't believe. I think this is the best edited joke book I've ever seen, and the best designed one. But it did well for us, and I set up a website to help authors through the process, because I had been there, now from the author's point of view, and I included some resources, where to find editing, where to find printing. And I started getting calls, well, can I help them do their books? So I said, well, I can help you with the production side. I mean, that I'm actually quite okay with. So I started taking on books. I don't know if Diane Bologna's in the room tonight. There she is. She was one of our first clients. You always remember your first. This was the first baby I popped out. Was Messenger in the Mirror. Beautiful little book. And she took a chance on us. And she also managed to sell, what, 2,000 or 3,000 copies. It was a hell of a lot. Yeah, she worked very, very hard. And that's where the company took off. We started consulting a lot. Now, there isn't much information on self-publishing out there. If anybody has actually investigated, you can find a lot online, but it's bitty information and it's contradictory. And some of it is really aimed at selling a company's services rather than providing objective advice. And we had our authors, every time we took an author on board, there was so much training involved that most of our job, 90%, was teaching authors the world of publishing, and 10% ended up being actually doing the book. And we kept repeating the same things again and again and again. And I thought, hang on a minute, there must be a better way to do this. How about write a book? And when they come to me, I give them the book and say, here we go, do your homework, I'll make the book. And that's really how the book was born.
All good. See, even seasoned radio professionals have problems with their microphones. Fascinating journey. I mean, Mpumi, maybe if I can ask you how you landed up at Quick Fox Publishing. One of the big things in the publishing world, and certainly as a journalist, that's always fascinated me, self-publishing seemed to have a bit of a stigma attached to it. You know, they go, oh, the quality's not great or whatever, and I never quite understood that. So maybe if you can chat a little bit about, you know, had you heard anything about self-publishing, and then how you landed up at Quick Fox Publishing.
Good evening, everyone. I think for me, I started the ordinary route. I wrote my synopsis. I went to traditional publishers and found out that they're going to have to make all the decisions, like photographer, even the recipes. Some of them, part of the feedback, they were already telling me, oh, you're going to have to include this recipe and this. This is what sells in South Africa. And I was like, but by the time we're done, the book is not going to be what I want to publish. You know, it's going to be a book that sells, not what I want to get out there. So I think from then, and also the percentages, yeah, 3%, 5%, and you write the whole book. So for me, it didn't sit well. I was like, if I'm not going to be wealthy from making a book, I might as well write a book that represents me and not make money, rather than have a book out there that's a bestseller that I don't recognize. So that's when I decided, no, I better find out how I can do this myself. And at the time last year, as some may remember, there was a book that had come out with a whole lot of editing issues. And everyone was busy talking about bad publishing, and how if you self-publish, people think it's because your book is not good enough, traditional publishers didn't want to do it, or it's just not an interesting book. That's why you're self-publishing. So I knew all of that. So I started contacting friends and finding out who had published, through whom, or if they've self-published, how did they do it. And I think it was Catherine who recommended Vanessa. So I picked up the phone and called Vanessa, and I said, I want to publish a book, can you help me? And I said to her, synopsis is already written, I have all my recipes done, I just need you to now tell me, how do we get this book out?
So, you see, generally when you're in a studio, you have a whole technical team who sort out, like drucking the knoppies and everything, and my technical guy's actually sitting upstairs recording this. So, you know, for anything you missed this evening, this will be published tomorrow via eBiz Radio as a podcast. It will also go through to Quick Fox Publishing, so you can download it. The only thing we all ask is please share it. You know, in hindsight, the oopsie last year with that big publishing house who seriously F-U-C-K-E-D up, it was so funny because the publishers blamed the editors blamed the printers blamed the author, and then suddenly they got in a lovely PR team who kind of spun it. But self-publishing has come a long, long way, you know. And so we've spoken a little bit about the stigma, which actually shouldn't even be there, in my opinion. And I'm kind of going to leave the next part of the discussion sort of free-flowing up to the two of you. Is that take us through that journey of self-publishing. What happens? And Vanessa, I mean, you had to be on both sides here. Not only were you the author of the book, but then you also edited and published yourself. Nothing like having a split personality, yeah?
Yes, it actually was. It was very intense because authors have the luxury of handing over a book normally and somebody else takes care of everything else. And because I do a lot of the work in my business, I had to do everything. I'm also budget strapped like a lot of other authors, and that I just don't have hundreds of thousands to throw at a project. But I wanted a good quality product. So the writing, I found the writing easily actually. I think if you have something to say, or if you're a subject specialist, it actually is quite easy to get it out there. You just have to sit down, put down the first word, and if you keep adding words, you'll eventually have a book. And that's pretty much what we did. I have to thank Georgina Hatch, my co-author, because she started the whole process. We had spoken about doing a book ages ago, and as you know, I'm very busy and I never have time, not even to answer phones, and she came to me with the skeleton and her chapters done, and she said, you know, here we go, if you could just spend December, this was towards the end of the year 2 years ago, just spend December, write up the rest, you know, well, I'll leave you to fill in all the gaps. And there were a lot of gaps, because when I started writing, those who know me as well, I can really go on. I can talk and talk. I can cover every angle. So I did have to pare down a bit. So the writing was easy because I think our clients have provided a lot of the material. Working with authors, knowing what their problems are, knowing where they come short, knowing what the difficulties are in the industry, because we've had to walk the journey with them. If there's a distribution issue, I'm the first person they're going to phone. I've nothing to do with distribution. You know, I'm not the bookstore, but I'm the one that'll get the call. And so, you know, and I don't like problems, so I'm a problem solver. So I keep finding ways to make things better. And so it was easy to do the book because I just had so much to say. The publishing part, again, I felt I could have gone the traditional route, and I think someone would have picked up the book and done it. The point is, I've got to walk my talk. I can't expect authors to self-publish if I'm going to go and get a traditional publisher. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to walk the talk, do everything that I say in the book, I'm going to do myself. And I'm going to make a success out of it. And then I've got a plan that I can actually take authors, you know, step by step. Say, this is a proven, tried and trusted method. And, you know, you can get your books out there. We have had many successes. It's not that I'm trying to lead the authors. Mpumi has been a success. It does take a certain type of author to make a success of self-publishing, but we've had many others, and I've got books here. We've got a children's book author who's doing phenomenally well. I mean, she sold like 1,000 books in a couple of weeks, I think it was. We've got Bob Delamotte. He wrote Runaway Comrade. He's just won the Spirit of Comrades Award 2 weeks ago for his contribution through his book. So we've you know, it's an amazing journey. But you're right, it's two hats. I've always said you can't just, one editor's never enough. Most self-publishing authors think that they can go and have the book edited, it gets one sweep and now it's ready for publication. I revised my book, I think it took a year to do all of those revisions, rewriting chapters that weren't making sense. I mean, the finance chapter, I came to proofing the book. And I started and I thought, what on earth am I saying? I don't even want to proof this is far too difficult. I had a real panic attack, and I thought, this has to be rewritten. And so that's how I think how the book works. But it's interesting because me having the editor's hat, then I'm writing and editing. Eventually you can't see the wood for the trees. So I have had the help of Michelle Bovey-Wood. She's at the back. She went through the book for me. Rachel Bay Miller, who couldn't make it unfortunately, she had to attend to an emergency. She also had a look, and I had the book proofread by someone in Israel, Nadine Dove. And you know, they were still picking up errors. So I thought, ooh.
You know, that's one of the things as a writer, you can reread something and you'll change it 1,000,000 times.